Groundhog's Day. Let's try this one more time. Labour, Corbyn, turned Parliament upside down, turned Parliament on his head, or at the very least was willing to turn Parliament on his head in order to stop a no-deal Brexit. There are two parts to this that I want to talk about. One is this kind of audacious use of parliamentary power. The other one is the completely ludicrous proposition that you can take no deal off the table. All of this is coming because Boris Johnson is the guy that's in the lead. And he has said they are leaving on October 30th with the deal or without. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is indeed the Progressive Soapbox. If you dig what I am putting down, please consider supporting this content through PayPal or Patreon. They have been demonetizing channels, and it has spooked pretty much everybody. We say $1 helps, and we actually mean $1 does indeed help. Let's hop across the pond and let's do the news. I did this show once. I hated that video, not to mention the video had an error in it that I couldn't necessarily correct. So the error is corrected. Let's do the news. This is one Mr. Boris Johnson. I want you to listen to what Boris Johnson is saying here. Boris Johnson is giving a speech. This is today. He is the leading candidate for the prime ministership. Right now, Theresa May left with pretty much no fanfare, which kind of, I guess, was a testament to the ignoble time she spent in that office. She's still kind of on as a lame duck until the Tories decide who they want and have that person voted on. Up until that point, though, she's kind of guiding the wheels of government. The government is kind of going its own course. Boris Johnson is the lead person in this candidacy. Listen to what Boris Johnson is saying. Listen to how he talks about Brexit. Theresa May was always squeamish about this notion of Brexit. She was ultimately a Remainer. She didn't necessarily believe in full-on Brexit. Boris Johnson is a true believer. When he says we are leaving on the 30th, he means it. Everybody knows he means it. So when he says it, there's a certain degree of gravity associated with it. Listen to Johnson. Listen to him. This was today.
We cannot ignore the morass at Westminster, where parties have entered a yellow box junction, unable to move forward or back, while around the country there is a mood of disillusion, even despair at our ability to get things done. The longer it goes on, the worse the risk that there will be serious contamination and a real loss of confidence, because the people of this country deserve better from their leaders. They need courage, and they need clarity, and they want a resolution. And that is our mission today. And that is why I'm standing before you, because now is the time to remember our duty to the people and the reasons for the Brexit vote. It wasn't just about democracy, though that was fundamental. It wasn't just about immigration, though people were entirely reasonable in wanting national controls. I remember that campaign vividly, and I think I understood some of the feelings of those who voted to leave. They wanted to be heard. They wanted to feel that they too could be part of the astonishing success of this country. They wanted to feel that their hopes and dreams were as important to the government as the desires and priorities of any metropolitan-style guru or tech king or the head of some FTSE 100 company. And so now is the time to unite this country and unite this society. And we cannot begin that task until we have delivered on the primary request of the people, the big thing that they asked us to do. After 3 years and 2 missed deadlines, we must leave the EU on October the 31st.
And again, he means this. Everybody knows he means this. This is not a Theresa May of Okay, we're going to get squeamish at the last minute. This is, you either get a deal or we leave without a deal. There is no in between. And again, I keep making the point. A no-deal Brexit is only averted by a deal. There is no such thing. It's one of those things where you have to actually get a deal in order to make that work. Theresa May said it over and over again, and I agreed with her every time she said it. Now, you can imagine this spooks some people, and there are several questions that are associated with this. Boris Johnson has the exact same parliament that Theresa May had, and Theresa May couldn't get her deal through. There was no way to get a deal through, any deal through. All of these guys, they were indecisive. What's going to be different? How is Boris Johnson going to get a deal through that Theresa May couldn't get through? And I'm saying not that he's pushing through her deal. I'm just saying any deal. How is he going to get it through? Is his alpha male energy going to be enough to kind of whip these guys into order where they kind of get somewhat of a resonance and everybody's kind of going behind him, in which case he can kind of force his will through Parliament? I'm dramatically doubtful of that. It seems that the members of Parliament were very clear that there is no penchant for a no deal in this particular Parliament. So then the question becomes, does he have to dissolve Parliament? Do you need another Parliament in order to deliver any sense of Brexit? I mean, after all, he has no mandate. He was put in office by a bunch of Tories. That's not indicative of the rest of the country itself. Does he have to win an election in order to get his mandate, his Brexit, through? These are fascinating questions, and I don't think anybody has an answer to this. I would argue that you're almost forced to have a general election in this process. But I've been wrong before. We'll see. I don't know how you enforce your level of a Brexit with this particular parliament, but we'll see. We'll see. So the other point to this is, does the EU change their policies one iota now that Boris Johnson is in office? The EU has up to this point said, kick rocks. The deal negotiated is the deal that we're working with. We're not changing. Which at this point you would imagine upticks the notion of a no-deal Brexit. But it's hard to know whether or not the EU is going to stick to that. I think they are, but for all we know, that could be just a negotiation ploy with the belief that Theresa May didn't have the ability to deliver any sort of Brexit, so the EU budging on anything was somewhat of a pointless position. Will the same thing be true for one Boris Johnson? If Boris Johnson is able to get anything through Parliament, is the EU willing to budge on what they're pushing for? These are fascinating questions. I mean, up to this point, the EU has said, we don't necessarily care who your prime minister is. The deal is the deal is the deal. Are they going to stick to it? Are they going to stick to it? On a second front, Jeremy Corbyn. So Jeremy Corbyn tried to turn Parliament on its head today, or you could say the Labour Party. They tried to wrestle control away in order to allow Parliament to put in binding votes. Essentially, they tabled amendments working cross-party with many of the other parties, Scottish National Party, etc., the guys who essentially every breath in their lungs is talking about how they want to stay in the European Union. But cross-party, they were able to essentially table a motion to try to get and wrestle control away. Well, wrestle control. They wanted Parliament to be able to make votes. That was voted down today. But what they were trying to do was to stop Johnson with this notion that we're leaving on October 30th with or without a deal. That is a nonsense proposition. I am sorry. I love Jeremy Corbyn to death, but that is a nonsense proposition. I suspect Jeremy Corbyn knows that, but he's looking for a way to attack the Tory position, especially the Tory position of a no-deal Brexit, when he knows that the rest of the public is not necessarily on board for it, even if they are on board for Brexit. It's a political stance. From a policy standpoint, if Jeremy Corbyn won the election tomorrow, and Jeremy Corbyn was stuck with his position, assume for the moment that he got what he wanted. No deal was off the table. He gets into office. He goes to Brussels, and they give him the exact same deal that they gave Theresa May. And what are you going to do? You're going to walk? You just said no deal is off the table. What are you going to do? You're going to be stuck with the deal that Theresa May had. This position makes no sense. Now, it does make sense if your goal in this is purely politics. If your goal is, yes, I don't necessarily want a no-deal Brexit, and maybe I don't want Boris Johnson's version of a no-deal Brexit, in which case I'm going to try to wrap him as much red tape as I could possibly wrap him in, knowing that if I get the opportunity to be in power, I'm not going to go for a no-deal Brexit anyway. See, the only problem with this argument is that no deal has to be on the table. There is no situation where you're going to lock yourself into a negotiation saying that whatever you give me is what I'm going to be willing to accept, no country would accept that. But ultimately, this is what is being said here. You're essentially saying that we will accept whatever the European Union gives us because we're trying to stop this notion of a no deal being on the table. It's not that I think it's the card that you should play. It is, however, acknowledging that in any negotiation, this notion that you're going to accept whatever anybody gives you is not going to fly. Walking always has to be on the table. They always have to be willing to some level of existence that you're willing to accept that's not necessarily great, but is better than what they're being offered. Just saying. It's a nonsense proposition to take no deal off the table. That said, Jeremy Corbyn is going after him for this because Jeremy Corbyn has to go after him for this because the politics demands he to go after him for this. He doesn't want to crash out of the European Union, and not just not want to crash out of the European Union, he wants to put a bright circle around the fact that this guy might do just that. This is his way of trying to force a snap election. This is his way of trying to force a snap election. And I got to be honest, I don't know how. No Tory wants to call a snap election right now. They would lose tremendously. Theresa May had took the Tory car, rammed it into the side of a bridge, and took a dump in it before she left it. It was in horrible straits. Whatever you want to think of Johnson, liar, sexist, womanizer, but charismatic. And you think of the other Tories who have the potential, I would wager that many American audience don't know any of those other people in the race, even though they may recognize Boris Johnson. It seems like that's the guy you got to get the ball to. I'm going to end this. I just wanted to give an overview of what was taking place in the context of the European Union. The indicative, well, it's not called indicative of votes. It's opposite party when the opposite gets the opportunity to put their votes up. But that was voted down. That was a no. That failed. That plan of trying to tie the hands up of the next prime minister failed. That did not work. So right now, Boris Johnson is leading the pack. He's probably the one that most people know the best. Labour, this was somewhat of a Hail Mary pass. This Hail Mary pass didn't go anywhere. And again, I got to be honest, I don't understand the argument of taking no deal Brexit off the table in the context of a negotiation. I don't. It's not that I think you should go for it, but the notion that you can say, we are going to lock ourselves in this room and we're going to take whatever you give us is nonsense. All right, I'll leave it here. Just wanted to give a heads up on what was taking place. I'm putting some of the articles at the bottom so you can get, what I just said is what took place. All right, guys, if you enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all.